Healthcare fraud. It's a really serious topic, especially in Arizona, and it can have huge life-altering consequences. So today, we're going to break it all down. What exactly is AHCCCS fraud? Who commits it? And what does the law actually say? Let's dive right in. All right, before we jump in, we have to get the important legal stuff out of the way. This information is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for legal advice from an experienced Arizona criminal defense attorney. If you are facing criminal charges under Arizona law, you should speak with an experienced Arizona criminal defense lawyer right away. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about what Arizona's AHCCCS even is. Then we'll define what fraud actually looks like in this system, look at some common examples, and figure out how a prosecutor would have to prove it. After that, we'll get into the serious stuff, penalties and deadlines, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you absolutely need to know. All right, first things first. You can't really get how people defraud a system until you understand the system itself, right? So let's start with the basics. Okay, so AHCCCS, and a quick heads up, you pronounce that access, like you're gaining access to healthcare. It actually stands for the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System. But, in plain English, it's basically Arizona's version of Medicaid. Its whole mission is to give affordable health insurance to low-income individuals and families who qualify. So, that's the system in a nutshell. Now for the big question. What does it actually mean to defraud it? What's the line between a mistake and a crime? When you boil it all down, it really comes down to one simple idea. Did you do it on purpose? AHCCCS fraud is all about intentionally giving false information. The goal is either to get healthcare benefits you shouldn't be getting or to dodge paying for something you owe. And it's really important to know this isn't just a one-way street. Fraud can come from two different directions. You've got the healthcare providers, we're talking doctors, clinics, hospitals, you name it, but you also have the people receiving the benefits, the patients or members who are getting the coverage. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this stuff actually look like in the real world? Let's get into some common examples, from billing scams to, straight up lies. When it comes to providers, the fraud is often all about the money, specifically shady billing. This could be anything from billing for services they never even provided to falsifying a patient's diagnosis just to justify more expensive treatments, or maybe they misrepresent what procedure was actually done. And then you get into the more clever stuff like upcoding and unbundling. We'll talk more about those in a sec, or even illegal kickbacks for sending patients their way. Upcoding and unbundling, they sound technical, but the ideas are pretty simple. Think of upcoding like this. You go in for a simple oil change, but the shop bills your insurance for a full engine rebuild. It's just billing for a much more expensive service than the one you actually got. And unbundling? Well, that's like buying a combo meal at a restaurant, but instead of paying the combo price, they charge you for the burger, the fries, the drink, and the box, all separately to jack up the total cost. Now, for patients, the fraud usually revolves around one thing: eligibility. Are you actually qualified for these benefits? So this could be things like lying about how much money you make or hiding assets so you look like you have a lower income. It could be faking your residency, saying you live in Arizona when you don't, or something as blatant as letting your friend or family member use your AHCCCS card. Okay, so let's say one of these cases actually goes to court. What does the prosecution have to do to win? They can't just stand up and say, this person committed fraud. No, they have a very specific checklist of things they have to prove. And in Arizona, that checklist has 5 key elements, and they have to prove every single one beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that you acted knowingly. This wasn't an accident. Second, that you used false information. Third, that it was part of a scheme or a plan. Fourth, you had the intent to mislead. And fifth, that you actually got some kind of benefit out of it. If the prosecution can't prove even one of those 5 things, their case just completely falls apart. Now, here's a really interesting legal point that trips a lot of people up. The prosecutors don't actually have to prove that AHCCCS believed the lie. It doesn't matter if the scheme worked or not. The crime is in the trying. Just knowingly attempting to defraud the system is enough to break the law, whether anyone fell for it or not. So, as you can probably guess, getting convicted of this stuff is no joke. We are not talking about a slap on the wrist here. The consequences are incredibly serious. Let's take a look at the potential penalties and the clock that's ticking for the prosecution. Generally, AHCCCS fraud is charged as a Class 2 felony. And just to be clear, that is one of the most serious categories of crime in Arizona. If you're convicted, you're looking at a potential prison sentence anywhere from 3 to 12.5 years. On top of that, you could face up to 7 years of probation. But this number right here, $100,000, this is a game changer. If the value of the fraud hits that number or goes above it, then forget about probation, forget about early release. It's all off the table. A conviction means you have to serve the full prison sentence, period. And remember that ticking clock I mentioned? Well, here it is. For AHCCS fraud, the statute of limitations is 7 years. That means prosecutors have exactly 7 years from when the alleged crime happened to file charges. Once that 7-year window closes, their chance is gone. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here, so let's slow down for a second and just nail down the most important things you need to remember from all this. So here are your key takeaways. Number 1, it's all about intention. Lying on purpose to get AHC as benefits, either as a provider or a patient. Number 2, the proof is key. Prosecutors have to check off all 5 boxes of a fraudulent scheme to get a conviction. Number 3, the penalty is huge. We're talking a Class 2 felony and real prison time. And finally, number 4, there's a deadline. The state has a 7-year window to file charges. And that's where we'll leave it. It's pretty clear this is a legally complicated and incredibly high-stakes area of the law. This isn't about an honest mistake on a piece of paperwork. It's about proving a deliberate, intentional scheme to defraud the system. And that really leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. With penalties this severe and a legal process this complex, what really is the single most critical next step for anyone who finds themselves facing charges like these?